Good evening, night owls, and welcome to Whisper Crowley. Tonight, I will guide you into a world of darkness, hoping to help you relax and unwind. Perhaps some of you will even drift into a haunting yet soothing sleep. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now we begin. Have you ever felt the weight of a stranger's gaze linger on you, heavy and unsettling? I had. It was late one evening in New Orleans, the kind of sultry night where the air hangs thick with humidity and mystery. The streetcar rattled along its track, weaving through shadows and flickering streetlights. The city was alive, yet somehow in that moment I felt utterly alone. I boarded the streetcar with a sigh of relief, eager to escape the sticky night air. The hum of conversation faded as I settled into a seat near the back. I could hear the creaking of the wooden seats, the occasional clatter of coins as the driver collected fares, and the low murmur of distant jazz spilling from nearby bars. Yet something felt off. An undercurrent of tension coursed through the air, wrapping around me like a shroud. My eyes wandered, taking in the other passengers. There was an elderly woman clutching her purse tightly, a couple huddled close together, whispering sweet nothings, and a man in a worn hat staring blankly out the window. But it was the man at the front of the streetcar who captured my attention. He sat alone, his back straight, hands resting on his knees. As the streetcar jostled along, I caught a glimpse of his face in the flickering light. His smile was unnaturally wide, stretching across his face in a way that made my stomach twist. It was as if he had been carved from shadows and brought to life. Something about that grin sent a chill down my spine, a feeling that something terrible lurked beneath the surface of his seemingly joyful demeanor. My heartbeat quickened, and I couldn't shake the sense that he was aware of me, watching, waiting. As the streetcar lurched forward, the old woman shifted nervously, casting wary glances at the man with the smile. I felt a wave of unease ripple through the car. The air was thick with anticipation, like the moments before a storm. I could hear the faint sound of the bell ringing as we approached the next stop, but my focus was solely on that man. His eyes, dark and hollow, locked onto mine. For a moment, time froze. What was it about him that drew me in? The way he seemed to exist outside the ordinary rules of the world. I felt a magnetic pull, as if he was beckoning me closer. But I resisted, heart pounding, fighting the urge to look away. The streetcar screeched to a halt, the doors sliding open with a hiss. The moment broke and he tilted his head slightly, his smile never wavering. As passengers filed off, I could feel my breath hitch in my throat. Should I leave? Escape while I still could. But there was something compelling about the man, a darkness that piqued my curiosity. I remained seated, my heart racing as I tried to gather my thoughts. The streetcar lurched forward again, and I was alone with him. The others had disappeared, leaving only the two of us in that dimly lit carriage. It felt surreal, the world outside fading into the background. The shadows deepened, and I suddenly became hyper-aware of every sound, the creaking of the metal, the soft whoosh of the air as it moved past the windows. "Why do you look so frightened?" he asked, his voice smooth like velvet, yet laced with an unsettling edge. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, I felt an overwhelming urge to flee. Yet something held me captive. I'm not frightened, I managed to croak, my voice barely above a whisper. His smile widened further, stretching beyond the limits of human expression. Ah, but fear is a powerful thing. It reveals truths we often hide from ourselves. His eyes glinted with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I was caught in his gaze, unable to look away, my rational thoughts slipping away like grains of sand through my fingers. What did he mean? My mind raced, trying to make sense of his words. I glanced around, desperate for an escape, but the streetcar felt like a cage. I have to get off, I finally said, my voice trembling. He leaned closer, the faint scent of something sweet and cloying wafting from him. Ah, but you can't escape your own mind. That's where the real madness lies. His words hung in the air like a heavy fog, wrapping around me, making it hard to breathe. Panic clawed at my insides, and I finally summoned the strength to stand, to move. I stumbled toward the doors, my heart racing. But just as I reached for the handle, the streetcar jolted, and the lights flickered ominously. In that moment, I realized I was trapped. The man's laughter echoed softly in the darkness, a sound both haunting and beautiful. You will see, he whispered, his eyes glinting with a twisted delight. You will see soon enough. As I stepped off the streetcar and into the night, the weight of his gaze lingered on me like a shadow. The world outside was bright and alive, but I felt the darkness creeping in, threatening to consume me whole. The sweet scent lingered, and as I walked away, I could feel the first stirrings of something I had never known before, a madness, a fear of the unknown that would follow me long after the streetcar had disappeared into the night. I stumbled away from the streetcar, the night air wrapping around me like a damp blanket. My heart raced, and I fought the urge to look back, convinced the man's unsettling smile would haunt me in the shadows. I tried to shake off the feeling, to convince myself it was just a trick of the mind. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. The streets of New Orleans were alive, yet they felt foreign, the familiar sounds of jazz and laughter now distorted and eerie. I turned the corner onto Bourbon Street, seeking solace in the vibrant energy of the crowd, but all I could think about was the man with the madness smile. I hurried past groups of revelers, their joyous shouts echoing in the air, but their laughter felt hollow to me. The weight of my encounter hung heavily in the pit of my stomach. That night I barely slept. My mind was a chaotic whirlpool, images of the man flashing through my thoughts like lightning. Every time I closed my eyes, I was met with the haunting vision of his grin, wide and predatory, lingering just at the edges of my consciousness. I tossed and turned, sheets twisting around me, my body drenched in sweat. Hours passed, or maybe it was just minutes. Time had lost all meaning. The walls of my small apartment felt like they were closing in. Shadows danced in the corners, and every creak of the old building sent a jolt of fear through me. I tried to focus on something else, anything else. I flipped through channels on the television, seeking distraction, but nothing held my attention. The news reports felt distant and unreal, mere background noise to my growing anxiety. As dawn approached, I could no longer ignore the gnawing sensation in my mind. I reached for my phone, fingers trembling as I scrolled through social media. I found posts about the streetcar, tales of strange occurrences, and sightings of the man with the smile. Each account sent chills down my spine. People spoke of sleepless nights, of shadows that seemed to follow them, of the blurred line between dreams and reality. I felt a shiver of recognition. The sun finally broke over the horizon, spilling golden light into my room. It should have brought me relief, but instead it felt like a cruel joke. The brightness only highlighted the exhaustion etched on my face. I forced myself to get up to shower and dress, but every movement felt heavy, like I was trudging through molasses. I made my way to a nearby cafe, hoping the aroma of fresh coffee would help me shake off the lingering dread. As I sipped my drink, I noticed the patrons around me. They laughed and chatted, but I felt a distance, as if an invisible wall separated me from them. I scanned the room, half expecting to see that man sitting at a table, grinning at me with that unnerving smile. But he was nowhere to be found. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I finished my coffee and stepped outside, the bustling streets of New Orleans alive with the sounds of a new day. Yet every corner I turned, every face I saw, felt like a reminder of my encounter. I felt like a ghost wandering through my own life, disconnected and fearful. That evening, I decided to avoid the streetcar entirely. I took a long walk instead, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. As I wandered, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. The streets transformed, taking on an almost surreal quality. The lights flickered on, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. But as I walked, I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. I glanced over my shoulder frequently, half expecting to see the man trailing me, his smile lurking in the shadows. My heart raced with each footstep, and I quickened my pace. I felt the weight of the night pressing in, the familiar streets now tinged with an air of menace. Finally, I found myself near the river, where the soft sound of water lapping against the shore momentarily calmed my frayed nerves. I leaned against a railing, breathing in the cool night air. The city was alive with music, but I could only hear the pulse of my own heart. I closed my eyes, focusing on the rhythm, trying to drown out the memories of that smile. But then I heard it, a soft, melodic laughter drifting through the air, haunting and sweet. I opened my eyes, scanning the area for the source. Was it my imagination? Or was the man with the smile closer than I thought? The sound echoed in my mind, a sinister reminder that I wasn't free from his influence. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something in my peripheral vision. A figure stood just beyond the reach of the streetlight, partially cloaked in darkness. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. It was him, his silhouette unmistakable, the same wide grin plastered across his face. "Did you miss me?" he asked, his voice low and inviting, sending a shiver down my spine. I took a step back, heart pounding, every instinct screaming for me to run. But I was rooted in place, caught in the web of his gaze. This was it. I could feel it. The madness had returned, and this time it wouldn't let me go so easily. The words hung in the air, suffocating me. I felt as though the ground beneath my feet had vanished, leaving only a void where reality once stood. The man with the maddening smile stepped closer, the dim streetlight casting flickering shadows that danced around him like phantoms. I could see his eyes, dark and glimmering, filled with an unsettling joy that sent chills crawling up my spine. "Did you miss me?" he repeated, the tone of his voice a strange mixture of mockery and allure. It was a question I couldn't answer. I stood frozen, my heart hammering in my chest as I fought the urge to turn and flee. What was this creature before me? A figment of my imagination or something much darker? Every instinct told me to run, yet I was ensnared in his gaze, as if he had cast a spell. The world around us began to blur, the laughter from the nearby bar fading into an echo, muffled and distant. It felt as if time itself had stopped, trapping us in this moment of terror. I could see the subtle twitch of his smile, a grotesque reflection of my own fear. "Come now," he coaxed, his voice honeyed yet chilling. "You're not afraid, are you?" The question wrapped around me, squeezing tighter, and I could feel my pulse quickening. It was a game to him, a thrill derived from watching my fear unravel. I took a step back, instinctively retreating, but he mirrored my movement, closing the distance with ease. "You wanted to know, didn't you? You wanted to discover the truth behind the whispers." His smile widened, stretching impossibly across his face, the corners lifting in a way that made me question the very nature of his humanity. "You threw your coin into the fountain. You wished. Now let's see what you've truly wished for." His words echoed in my mind, slicing through the fog of confusion. I remembered the old fountain, the shallow water glimmering under the moonlight, how I had tossed a coin with naive hope. What had I wished for? I couldn't recall. The desire to escape my mundane life. The longing for adventure. Or was it something darker, a yearning to understand the shadows lurking at the edges of my reality? "Let me show you," he whispered, stepping closer still. I could smell the faint scent of something sweet yet rotting, a noxious blend that made my stomach churn. "You'll understand soon enough." Before I could react, he reached out, his fingers brushing against my arm, and a wave of dizziness crashed over me. The world around us shifted, the colors swirling into a kaleidoscope of confusion. The street vanished, replaced by a haze of shimmering lights and ghostly forms. I stumbled, grappling with the disorientation, my mind racing. Suddenly I found myself in a dimly lit room, the walls lined with mirrors reflecting fragmented images of my own terrified expression. Panic surged as I looked around, trying to make sense of my surroundings. The reflections twisted and warped, showing me versions of myself that were gaunt and hollow, eyes wide with fear. I wanted to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. "Welcome to your dreams," the man's voice echoed around me, smooth and taunting. "Or perhaps your nightmares. It's hard to tell, isn't it?" His laughter echoed, a haunting melody that reverberated through the mirrors. I stumbled back, pressing against the cool glass, desperate to escape the distorted reflections. Each mirror seemed to show me a different reality, each one a potential future or a dark memory I had buried deep within. I could see glimpses of myself alone in dark alleys, faces twisted in anguish, shadows creeping ever closer. I felt their despair seep into my bones, a cold grip of hopelessness. "Stop," I managed to shout, my voice cracking with fear. "What is this? What do you want from me?" "Oh, but you already know," he replied, his tone dripping with amusement. "You wanted to know the truth. You wanted to dive deep into the depths of your own mind. But be careful what you wish for." With a snap of his fingers, the mirrors shattered, sending shards flying through the air. I shielded my face as they whirled around me, each piece reflecting fragments of my past. I could see the faces of loved ones, the warmth of their smiles juxtaposed against the darkening shadows behind me. The memories felt suffocating, wrapping around me like a heavy shroud. I turned to run, but the ground beneath me shifted, becoming a swirling mist that threatened to pull me under. Panic rose within me as I struggled to keep my footing, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. I had to wake up. I had to get out of this place. "Where are you going?" His voice slithered through the chaos. "You can't escape what you've wished for." Desperation clawed at my insides as I pushed forward, fighting against the darkness that sought to consume me. I didn't want this. I didn't want to confront the nightmares that lingered just below the surface of my consciousness. But I had to. I had to find a way back to reality. With each step, I focused on the sound of my breath, grounding myself. I could feel the pull of the darkness, but I refused to give in. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted, the words bursting from my lips with a ferocity I didn't know I possessed. The laughter around me faltered, a flicker of uncertainty passing through the distorted realm. "Oh, but you are," he hissed, his figure flickering like a candle flame caught in the wind. "You're afraid of what lies within." Suddenly, the mist began to dissipate, revealing a path leading away from the darkness. It was faint, barely illuminated, but it was there. Hope ignited within me. I dashed forward, determined to break free from this nightmare, to reclaim my reality. As I ran, I could feel the man's presence lingering behind me, his laughter echoing through the shadows. But I wouldn't let him stop me. I couldn't let him win. With each step I pushed through the haze, my heart pounding in my chest, the distant memory of my own will igniting a flame of defiance. Finally, I burst through a barrier of darkness, and suddenly I was back on the streets of New Orleans. The sounds of the city returned, familiar and chaotic. I stumbled forward, gasping for breath, relief flooding over me. But as I turned to look back, I found myself alone. The streetcar had vanished along with the man. Yet deep inside, I knew this was not over. The shadows still loomed, and I could still feel his chilling smile lingering in the depths of my mind. I had escaped, but at what cost? I felt the weight of my own desires pressing down on me, and I knew I had only just begun to unravel the truth behind the madness that awaited. I stumbled through the streets of New Orleans, the vibrant city now cloaked in an eerie twilight. Each shadow seemed to stretch and sway, whispering secrets I could not decipher. My heart raced, a relentless drumbeat echoing the terror I had just escaped. But the escape felt hollow. The chilling presence of that man, with his unnatural smile, lingered like a ghost, hovering just beyond the periphery of my consciousness. The streets were alive, yet I felt utterly isolated. People moved around me, laughing and chatting, oblivious to the darkness that clung to me. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to shake off the residual fear that wrapped around my thoughts like a vine. Yet the memories of the shattered mirrors and the twisted reflections haunted me. "What do you want?" I whispered to myself, as if the question could unravel the enigma that had ensnared me. The flickering streetlights cast long shadows that danced along the cobblestones, reminding me of the laughter that still echoed in my mind. It was unsettling how familiar the laughter sounded, as though it belonged to someone I knew. I needed to understand. I had to confront this madness before it consumed me entirely. With every passing moment, I felt the weight of the desire I had tossed into the fountain. It was no longer a simple wish. It had become a curse, binding me to the horrors I had witnessed. As I walked, I found myself drawn to the park where the fountain lay. The air grew thicker, charged with an electric tension that made my skin prickle. The once inviting glow of the fountain now looked ominous under the flickering light of the moon. I hesitated at the edge of the path, dread pooling in my stomach. "Go back," a voice within urged me, echoing the fear that clawed at my heart. But curiosity pulled me forward, urging me to unearth the truth buried beneath my wish. The fountain bubbled gently, the water glistening under the moonlight, calling me closer. I approached cautiously, the sound of the water bubbling blending with the whispers of the wind. As I peered into the depths of the fountain, I expected to see my own reflection. Instead, I was met with swirling images, faces contorted in anguish, shadows lurking just out of sight, and the figure of the man with the smile looming larger and larger. "Your wish is powerful," a voice echoed, as soft as a sigh yet as sharp as a knife. I flinched, looking around, but found no one. "You are not the first to seek the truth," it continued, reverberating around me. "But truth comes at a cost." I took a step back, the realization crashing over me like a wave. I was not alone in this. Others had come before me, drawn to the fountain, lured by the promise of fulfilled desires. Yet their faces were twisted in despair, forever marked by the consequences of their wishes. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Show yourself." The air grew heavy, and the water in the fountain began to churn violently, spilling over the edges. Images whirled faster, and for a moment I thought I could hear the anguished cries of those who had come before me, begging for release from their own nightmares. "I am the keeper of wishes," the voice replied, its tone calm yet chilling. "I guard the desires thrown into the fountain, and in return I collect the fragments of their souls. You've stirred something within me. You seek understanding, but can you bear the weight of it?" "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, anger flaring within me. "Why can't people just have their wishes without consequences?" The voice chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Ah, but desires are never without cost. Each wish pulls at the fabric of reality, weaving threads of fate that can unravel lives. You wished for the truth, and now you stand on the precipice of madness." The fountain bubbled, and suddenly I felt the pull of something dark and powerful. My heart raced as I caught a glimpse of the man with the smile, his eyes gleaming with malevolent delight. "He is waiting," the voice whispered. "He is a part of you now." "No," I cried out, clenching my fists. I could feel the weight of the wishes I had made pressing down on me, each one a chain binding me to the madness that threatened to engulf me. "Embrace it," the voice urged, seductive and persuasive. "Only by confronting your deepest fears can you hope to find freedom. Do you dare to dive deeper?" The water surged, and I staggered back, feeling my breath quicken. I was trapped between the reality I knew and the darkness that awaited me. I had to make a choice, to confront the truth or to flee, forever haunted by the shadows of my desire. In that moment, clarity washed over me. I was tired of running, tired of hiding from the darkness within. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I will face it. I will confront him. The voice laughed, a sound that echoed with approval. Very well. Step into the depths of your own making. Embrace the shadows. Let the madness show you the way. With a determined heart, I stepped closer to the fountain, feeling the pull of the water, the visions swirling like a tempest. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to be drawn into the depths, surrendering to the chaos. As I fell, I could hear the man's laughter mingling with the sounds of shattered glass, a melody of madness that promised both understanding and despair. The world around me dissolved, and in that moment, I was no longer afraid. I was ready to confront whatever awaited me in the abyss. I fell through a darkness that felt alive, swirling and pulsating around me like a living entity. As the cool water enveloped me, I was struck by a sense of weightlessness. I was no longer bound by the rules of the world above. Here in this abyss, the laws of reality twisted and curled like smoke. I opened my eyes, and the depths of the fountain unfurled before me in a mesmerizing display of colors and shapes. Visions danced around me, flickering like a film reel unspooling, glimpses of lives intertwined with wishes gone wrong. Faces flashed before me, their eyes wide with terror, each one a mirror reflecting a fragment of my own fears. I saw a woman, desperate and alone, tossing a coin into the fountain, her silent plea for love turning into a nightmare of obsession. A child cried out for a toy, only to find it transformed into a grotesque monster that haunted his dreams. The laughter of the man with the smile echoed in my mind, reverberating like a haunting melody. Look closely, the voice urged, smooth yet sinister. This is what you sought, the truth of your desire. Do you still wish to confront him? I felt a shiver run down my spine, the chilling reminder of the man who had invaded my mind. Yes, I whispered, the word escaping my lips like a prayer. I was tired of running, tired of fear ruling my life. I had to understand the nature of this madness, even if it cost me my sanity. As the visions continued to swirl around me, the water began to calm, and a figure materialized from the depths, a silhouette draped in shadows, with a smile that sent waves of dread coursing through me. It was him. The man from the streetcar, his features sharp and haunting, eyes glimmering like shards of glass reflecting the light of the abyss. Welcome, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. You've finally decided to join me. Tell me, what is it that you seek? Understanding, power, or perhaps just an escape from your own mind. I swallowed hard, every instinct screaming for me to flee. I want to understand why, I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. Why do you haunt those who wish upon the fountain? He tilted his head, the smile widening unnaturally. Ah, the age-old question. Wishes are not simply desires, they are threads in the tapestry of fate. Each wish carries weight. Each wish demands a price. He stepped closer, and the darkness around him pulsed as if it were alive, eager to envelop me. Tell me, what did you wish for? I hesitated, the memories of my desire flooding back, my longing for control over my life, my yearning for clarity amidst the chaos. I wished to understand my fears, I confessed. I thought that knowing them would set me free. He chuckled, a sound that resonated through the water, sending ripples of anxiety coursing through me. A freedom. You think understanding will grant you freedom. Knowledge is a double-edged sword. It can illuminate, yes, but it can also blind. The visions around us shifted, morphing into a whirlwind of nightmares, my own anxieties materializing before me. I saw myself trapped in a cycle of sleepless nights, plagued by shadows that whispered my insecurities. I saw the faces of those I loved, their expressions twisted in fear as they turned away from me, unable to bear the burden of my unraveling sanity. "Stop it," I shouted, clenching my fists. "I refuse to let this define me." "Ah, but it is too late," he replied, his voice smooth as silk. "You are already defined by your fears. They shape you, mold you into something unrecognizable. You have embraced the madness, and now it embraces you." The darkness around me thickened, and I felt it closing in, suffocating and relentless. My heart raced, panic clawing at my throat. "No, I won't let you take me," I forced the words through clenched teeth, my resolve hardening. In that moment, I realized that I had a choice. The power of my desire was mine to wield. I concentrated on the light that flickered within me, the hope that had driven me to confront this darkness. I wished to face my fears, to transform them rather than let them control me. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows around me began to shift. The man's smile faltered for a brief second, surprise flashing across his features. "Foolish girl," he hissed, his voice laced with venom. "You cannot simply wish away the darkness." "Watch me," I said defiantly. As I spoke those words, a wave of light surged within me, expanding outward and pushing against the shadows. The darkness recoiled, the water around me shimmering with an otherworldly glow. I could feel the weight of my fears, my insecurities, my regrets, lifting as I embraced them, no longer a prisoner to their grasp. The visions twisted and writhed, morphing into a kaleidoscope of colors that danced with possibility. The laughter of the man faded into a whisper, becoming a distant echo. I could feel the pull of reality tugging at me, urging me to return to the world above, to reclaim my life. "I am not afraid," I declared, the words resonating through the abyss. "I will not be defined by my fears. I will take control of my own fate." In an explosive burst of energy, the darkness shattered, scattering like ashes in the wind. The man's figure dissolved into shadows, and I felt myself being pulled back upward toward the light. As the water around me began to dissipate, I sensed a final lingering presence, the weight of the man's smile, now reduced to a whisper. With a gasp, I emerged from the fountain, collapsing onto the cool, hard ground. I lay there panting, the night air brushing against my skin. I was back in the park, the stars twinkling above me like a promise of hope. But as I rose to my feet, a shiver ran down my spine. The man's laughter echoed faintly in my mind, a reminder that the darkness was never far away. I looked around, half expecting him to appear, but the park was empty, the shadows receding into the night. I had faced my fears, but the battle was far from over. I felt the weight of my choice pressing on me. Understanding would come at a cost, and I had to remain vigilant. The night was still alive with whispers, and the road ahead was uncertain. Yet I was ready to embrace it, ready to confront whatever lay in the shadows. As I walked away from the fountain, I could hear the distant sound of a streetcar approaching, its bell ringing softly in the night. The journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. I hope you enjoyed the first story. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, but if I didn't do my job well, feel free to give it a thumbs down. Either way, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, let's continue. What happens when the walls of a home are steeped in sorrow? What do they whisper in the stillness of night? The old farmhouse loomed before me, a relic of a forgotten era. Its weathered wood and peeling paint told stories of neglect and despair. I stood on the creaking porch, heart pounding, staring at the dim windows that seemed to watch me back. This place, with its expansive fields and silent barn, felt heavy with secrets. The air was thick, suffocating in its stillness. I could almost hear the whispers of its past echoing through the halls. My name is James, and my family had bought this farm hoping to escape the chaos of city life. The promise of tranquility was alluring, but I was beginning to wonder if we had traded one form of madness for another. As I stepped inside, the door groaned, a mournful sound that sent a chill down my spine. Dust motes floated in the fading light, dancing like lost souls searching for a way out. It was my first night in the farmhouse. I could feel the weight of silence pressing down on me, a palpable presence that wrapped around my shoulders. My wife Emily had already retired to bed, and the soft sound of her breathing echoed through the hallways. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard it for the first time, a soft, rhythmic sound like footsteps on the creaky floorboards above. My heart raced. I sat up, straining to listen. The laughter was faint, almost playful, but it felt wrong. It wasn't a joyous sound, it was hollow, tinged with an unsettling familiarity. I glanced at Emily, but she was lost in a deep sleep, oblivious to the noise that pierced the night. Just the house settling, I whispered to myself, though doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind. I could almost feel the shadows in the corners of the room watching me, waiting. The next morning, I decided to explore the house. The sunlight streamed through the grimy windows, illuminating the dust-covered furniture and faded wallpaper. Each room told a story, but the air felt heavy, as if the very walls were saturated with pain. The kitchen was particularly unnerving. I could almost imagine the previous owners, trapped in a cycle of despair, cooking their last meals with hollow eyes. I opened the door to the attic, a place I had dreaded since our arrival. The rickety ladder creaked under my weight as I climbed into the dimly lit space. Dust hung in the air, creating a ghostly glow. Old trunks and broken furniture lay scattered, remnants of lives once lived. But it was the laughter that echoed in my mind. Where did it come from? As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something in the corner, a shadow darting behind a stack of boxes. My breath caught in my throat. "Hello," I called, my voice trembling. Silence enveloped me once more. I shook my head, dismissing it as a trick of the light, but unease settled in the pit of my stomach. That night, as the stars twinkled in the vast Kansas sky, the laughter returned, louder this time, intertwining with the soft creaks of the house. I lay wide awake, drenched in cold sweat, as the sound seeped into my dreams, twisting them into nightmares. I saw faces, anguished, desperate, eyes pleading for release. They seemed to reach out to me, their cries echoing in the corners of my mind. "James," Emily's voice broke through the haze. "What's wrong?" I turned to her, my heart racing. "Did you hear that? The laughter. Emily frowned, concern etched on her face. It's just the wind. You need to relax. But I couldn't relax. The laughter morphed into whispers, wrapping around me like tendrils of smoke. You're not safe here, they hissed. This place is filled with sorrow. The next day, I decided to speak with the locals. I needed answers. At the diner, I encountered a group of old men gathered around a table, their eyes clouded with memories. When I mentioned the farm, their expressions darkened. Best to leave it alone, one of them warned, his voice gravelly. Bad things happened there. The last owners, they didn't live on their own terms. Suicides, another added, shaking his head. No one talks about it, but it lingers. You can feel it in the air. Their words sent a chill down my spine. I returned home, the weight of their warnings heavy on my shoulders. That night, the laughter crescendoed, reverberating through the halls, filling the spaces between my thoughts with dread. I clutched the sheets, staring into the darkness, determined to confront whatever haunted the farmhouse. But as the laughter rose to a fever pitch, I felt a presence looming over me, a suffocating darkness that seemed to seep into my very soul. I was losing my grip on reality. The house was alive and it fed on fear. I had to escape, but where could I go? The walls were closing in, and I could no longer distinguish between nightmare and reality. As I drifted into an uneasy sleep, I resolved to uncover the truth of the farm's history, even if it meant confronting the nightmares that awaited me. The echo of silence grew louder, and I knew this was only the beginning. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. The old farmhouse stood tall and weathered, its peeling paint telling tales of neglect and time. I felt a chill creep up my spine as I stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with dust that danced in the fading light. A shiver ran through me, not just from the cold, but from a strange sensation, as if the walls were watching, whispering secrets I couldn't quite grasp. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. This place had potential, so much potential. The previous owners had left in a hurry, leaving behind a treasure trove of forgotten memories. But there was something off about it, an unsettling vibe that clung to the air like a persistent fog. It was in the creak of the floorboards and the whisper of the wind through cracked windows. As I moved through the dimly lit rooms, I could almost hear the echoes of laughter and conversation, fading memories of a family that once thrived here. I paused in the living room where an old rocking chair swayed slightly, though the air was still. My heart raced. Had someone just been sitting there? Get a grip, I muttered to myself, shaking off the unease. I needed to focus on the task at hand, renovating this place to make it a home for my family. But then came the sounds. At first it was just the wind rustling the leaves outside, but soon there was something else, a soft, barely audible laughter. I turned sharply, my heart pounding. It felt like it was coming from above, from the attic. The hair on my arms stood on end, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just the house settling, or perhaps a loose board creaking under the weight of the old roof. But deep down, I knew that wasn't quite right. Something sinister lurked just beyond my perception. As darkness settled in, I grabbed a flashlight and headed towards the stairs leading up to the attic. Each step creaked ominously beneath my weight, the sound reverberating through the silent house. The laughter grew louder, a sweet, playful sound that was both inviting and chilling. I hesitated, caught between the urge to flee and the morbid curiosity that pulled me forward. The attic door stood ajar, a thin sliver of darkness beckoning me. I pushed it open and it groaned in protest, sending a shiver of anticipation down my spine. Inside, the air was cooler, musty with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. Shadows danced along the walls, and I felt an unshakable sense that I wasn't alone. I scanned the space with my flashlight. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, remnants of the past. Old toys, faded photographs, and cracked mirrors. The laughter echoed again, clearer now, ringing with a childlike glee. "Come play with us," it seemed to beckon. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. The room was silent, but the laughter faded into a low whisper, almost mocking. A chill ran down my spine as I stepped deeper into the attic, the light flickering ominously. My mind raced with thoughts of the previous owners, what had happened to them. The old-timers in town had hinted at something darker, something that hung over this place like a shroud. I had dismissed their warnings, but now they echoed in my mind, mingling with the sounds of the laughter that continued to tease me. I approached a dusty old trunk at the far end of the room. The laughter seemed to grow louder, filling my ears, urging me to open it. "What secrets do you hold?" I whispered, half to myself. The trunk was locked, but I could feel an inexplicable pull to it, as if it contained the answers I desperately sought. Suddenly a gust of wind blew through the attic, slamming the door shut behind me. Panic surged in my chest, and I rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. I turned back to the room, my heart racing. The laughter transformed into a cacophony of whispers, swirling around me, drowning out my thoughts. Shadows flickered in the corners of my vision, and the temperature plummeted. "Let me out," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. The shadows danced closer, morphing into indistinct shapes that loomed over me, their features hidden in darkness. The laughter turned sinister, a chilling sound that filled the air. "Stay with us forever," the voices echoed, and I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering violently. I felt as if the walls themselves were closing in, the weight of despair pressing down on me. In a moment of sheer panic, I lunged for the trunk, desperate to uncover its contents. I grabbed a nearby tool, rusty and heavy, and smashed it against the lock. With a loud crack, it splintered open. The trunk flew open, revealing a jumble of old toys and letters, forgotten remnants of childhood innocence. But amidst them lay something far darker, old newspaper clippings detailing the tragic fate of the previous owners. My hands shook as I picked up a brittle article, the headline glaring at me, "Family found dead on the farm, circumstances mysterious." My heart dropped, the laughter silenced, replaced by an eerie stillness. As I read through the details, a creeping sense of dread settled in my gut. Then I saw it, a photograph of a family standing in front of the very house I now occupied. Their faces were eerily familiar, as if I were staring into a mirror. A feeling of terror washed over me. The whispers began again, softer now, but still insistent. "Join us. Don't leave." I stumbled backward, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The attic door flew open with a force that sent me sprawling to the ground. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing, and bolted down the stairs, desperate to escape the nightmare that was beginning to consume me. As I fled, I could still hear the laughter trailing behind me, mingling with the whispers of the past, reminding me that this farm held secrets far darker than I could have ever imagined. The echoes of despair lingered, promising that the true horror was yet to come. I stumbled down the creaky stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears like a warning bell. The dim light of the hallway seemed to pulse, a reminder of the darkness I had just encountered. I barely registered the way the shadows shifted around me, twisting and elongating as if they were reaching out to claim me. Outside, the night air was thick with tension. I stepped onto the porch, gasping for breath, trying to shake off the remnants of that chilling encounter. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a ghostly glow over the land, illuminating the fields that stretched endlessly before me. But even in the moonlight, the darkness felt palpable, as if it was waiting for me to let my guard down. I closed my eyes for a moment, attempting to clear my head. I needed to focus. My family was depending on me. We had left behind everything in the city for a fresh start, a new beginning on this seemingly charming farm. But what I had found tonight was anything but welcoming. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had awakened something sinister, something that had lain dormant for far too long. Breathe, I whispered to myself, feeling the cool night air fill my lungs. You can handle this, but deep down, I knew that what I had discovered was just the beginning. The whispers had promised more, and I could feel their insidious pull wrapping around my mind, tugging at the edges of my sanity. I decided to check on my family. They needed to know what was happening, but I feared telling them would only incite panic. I glanced back at the farmhouse, its silhouette looming ominously against the moonlit sky. What would I even say? Hey, I think the house is haunted. As I stepped inside, I was met with an eerie silence. The laughter had ceased, but I felt the atmosphere thickening around me, stifling and heavy. I moved cautiously through the dimly lit rooms, the flashlight illuminating only fragments of the familiar. Each creak of the floorboards sounded like a whisper, beckoning me to listen, to remember. I found my family in the kitchen, gathered around the table. My wife, Emily, was leaning over a map, tracing our plans for renovations. Our daughter, Lily, was playing with a worn-out doll she had found in one of the boxes, blissfully unaware of the darkness lurking just outside our door. Everything okay? Emily asked, looking up as I entered. There was concern in her eyes, and I realized I must have looked a mess, sweaty, wide-eyed, and panicked. Yeah, just checking on things, I replied, forcing a smile. I didn't want to burden them with my fears. How's the planning going? Emily sighed, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. We've got a lot to do, but we can make this place amazing. Her optimism was infectious, but I struggled to match it. I wanted to believe it would be that simple. Lily looked up from her doll, her eyes shining with innocence. Daddy, can we play in the attic tomorrow? I found a treasure map. My stomach dropped. The attic. The very place that had sent me spiraling into panic just moments ago. Maybe not just yet, sweetheart. It's a bit dusty up there. How about we explore the garden instead? Okay, she chirped, oblivious to my inner turmoil. I forced myself to focus on Emily and Lily, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the attic and the shadows that lingered there. I needed to find a way to rid this place of its dark energy. Perhaps I could talk to the neighbors, get a better understanding of the history of the farm. But as I glanced at Emily, I realized how difficult it would be to convince her that there was anything to fear. That night I lay in bed, listening to the gentle sounds of my family's breathing. But sleep eluded me. I kept replaying the moments in the attic, the laughter, the shadows, the newspaper clippings. What had happened to the previous owners? Why had they left in such a rush? As I stared into the darkness of our bedroom, I felt it again, the sensation of being watched. I turned my head, searching for a source, but the room remained still. Shadows danced along the walls, teasing me, merging with the darkness of my thoughts. I could almost hear their whispers again, echoing in my mind. "Stay with us." I pulled the blanket tighter around me, but it offered no comfort. The feeling of despair was suffocating, as if the very fabric of the house was woven with sorrow. The laughter echoed through my mind, mixing with the sound of wind rattling the window. I needed answers, and as dawn approached, I resolved to confront the darkness that lingered within the farmhouse. The very next day, I would dig deeper into its history, uncover its secrets, and perhaps find a way to break the cycle of despair. But as I drifted into a restless sleep, the shadows continued their vigil, whispering promises of pain and sorrow, reminding me that the true nightmare was just beginning. Morning came too soon, the sun barely rising over the horizon. I felt heavy with fatigue, but the urgency of my mission drove me to get out of bed. I moved quietly, careful not to wake Emily and Lily, who were still lost in dreams. I decided to start with the local library. I dressed quickly, still haunted by the remnants of the previous night. As I stepped outside, the morning air felt fresh and cool against my skin, but an unsettling chill lingered, as if the day itself was watching me. The small town was waking up, but I felt isolated. I had entered a world filled with people, yet it felt empty. My mind was focused on one thing, the farm. I needed to learn about its history, the families that had come before us, and the whispers that echoed in the night. As I drove toward the library, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but saw only the empty road behind me. Yet the sensation persisted, a weight on my chest that made every breath feel labored. At the library, the musty smell of old books greeted me, and I made my way to the local history section. The shelves were lined with dusty volumes, filled with records and stories of the town's past. I started flipping through the pages, looking for anything related to our farm. Hours passed as I delved deeper into the history, my heart sinking with each revelation. I uncovered stories of sorrow, of families torn apart, of tragedies that plagued the land. And there it was, the mention of the previous owners, their names buried in a sea of forgotten memories. They had lived on the farm for generations, only to meet a tragic end, shrouded in mystery. I read about their final days, rumors of strange occurrences, odd behavior, and whispers of madness that had consumed them. The more I read, the more the weight on my chest grew. It was as if I was unearthing a curse that had been placed on this land, one that had clung to every corner of the farmhouse. With a sense of dread, I closed the book, my mind racing. I needed to return home to confront whatever was waiting for me. But as I stood to leave, the librarian approached me. Looking for something specific, she she asked, her voice low and cautious. I hesitated, unsure of how much to share. Just some history on the old farm outside of town. Her expression shifted, a shadow crossing her face. That place has a dark reputation. Many prefer not to speak of it. Why? What happened there? I pressed, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. She glanced around as if ensuring no one else was listening. It's said that the farm is cursed. People who live there often experience unusual things. Unusual. Voices, laughter, things moving on their own. Some have even claimed to see figures lurking in the shadows. It's not a place for the faint of heart. My heart raced. The very things I had experienced. What happened to the last family? She hesitated, her eyes darkening. They didn't leave under good circumstances. It's best you stay away from that place. Some things are better left buried. With those ominous words echoing in my mind, I left the library, a cold sweat breaking out across my skin. The shadows of despair were closing in, and I had to return to the farm before it consumed me completely. As I drove back, I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, a reminder that the true horror lay ahead. The drive back to the farm felt interminable, every second stretching out like an eternity. I could barely concentrate on the road. My thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. The librarian's warning echoed in my mind, a relentless reminder of the darkness that had seeped into our lives since moving to this forsaken place. As I turned onto the gravel path leading to the farmhouse, the familiar landscape seemed to morph into something more sinister. The fields, once vibrant with potential, now appeared desolate and haunted. The wind rustled through the tall grass, producing a low, mournful sound that chilled me to the bone. It felt as if the earth itself was groaning under the weight of the secrets it harbored. I parked the car and stepped out, taking a moment to absorb the atmosphere. The sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the yard. A sense of urgency propelled me forward, pushing me toward the house where my family awaited, blissfully unaware of the malevolent energy that lurked just beneath the surface. Upon entering, I was greeted by an unsettling silence. The air felt thick and heavy, as though the house itself was holding its breath. I called out for Emily and Lily, but my voice seemed to vanish into the stillness. Anxiety clawed at my throat as I made my way through the dimly lit rooms, my heart pounding louder with each step. I found Emily in the living room, her brow furrowed in concentration as she arranged some of the items we had unpacked. Lily was perched on the couch, playing with her doll, a serene look on her face. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of normalcy, a reminder of the life we were trying to build. But that comfort was quickly crushed under the weight of my mounting dread. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile despite the turmoil inside. "I just got back from the library. We need to talk." Emily's expression shifted, concern etched across her features. "What's wrong? You look pale." I found some things about the farm, about the last family that lived here. I hesitated, not wanting to frighten them. "It's not good." Lily looked up from her doll, her innocent curiosity momentarily distracting me. "Daddy, is it a ghost story?" she asked, eyes wide with excitement. I knelt down to her level, searching for the right words. It's more complicated than that, sweetheart." It's about things that happened here, things we need to understand. I could see Emily's eyes narrow in concern, and I continued. There are rumors about voices and strange happenings. I think we might be dealing with something more than just an old house. Emily took a deep breath, her expression shifting from concern to skepticism. You can't be serious. We've heard some creaks and bumps, but that's just old houses settling. What is it? The last family had serious problems. I paused, weighing my words carefully. They didn't leave under good circumstances. Lily's face fell, and I hated to see her disappointment. But we can make it nice, right, Daddy? It's just an old house. Before I could respond, a sudden chill filled the room. The temperature dropped noticeably, and a sense of unease settled over us like a thick fog. I felt the hairs on my arms stand up, an instinctual warning signaling that something was not right. Emily glanced around, her bravado faltering. Maybe we should just relax for tonight. We can talk about it in the morning. But I knew that we were running out of time. The shadows that had haunted me were closing in, and I could feel their presence creeping into our lives, wrapping around us like a suffocating shroud. Let's just stay together tonight, I suggested, a tremor in my voice. We can sleep in the living room. I think it would help us all feel safer. Emily looked uncertain, but she nodded. All right, we'll do that. But let's try to keep it light, okay? For Lily, we gathered blankets and pillows, creating a makeshift nest on the living room floor. As darkness fell, the atmosphere grew heavier. The weight of the house felt tangible, as if it were pressing down on us, squeezing the joy from the air. I tried to keep the mood light, telling stories and making jokes, but I could sense that both Emily and Lily were growing uneasy. The laughter felt forced, like a thin veneer over our collective fear. As the hours dragged on, the wind picked up outside, howling against the windows with an eerie intensity. The old house groaned, the sounds echoing through the halls, heightening my anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, the eyes of the past bearing down on us, eager to reclaim what was theirs. Around midnight, I awoke with a start. The room was dimly lit by the soft glow of the moon filtering through the curtains. I looked around, disoriented, the remnants of a dream slipping away like smoke. Then I heard it, a soft giggle echoing from the attic above. My heart raced as I strained to listen, the sound repeating, a childlike laugh that sent chills down my spine. Lily stirred beside me, mumbling in her sleep, but did not wake. I glanced at Emily, who was still sound asleep. I felt the urge to shake her awake, to tell her about the laughter, but a sense of dread held me back. I didn't want to frighten her. I didn't want to alarm anyone until I knew for sure what was happening. Quietly, I rose to my feet, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The sound echoed in the stillness, reminding me of the oppressive silence that enveloped us. I hesitated, glancing back at my family. But the curiosity and fear compelled me forward. I crept toward the attic door, my breath quickening with each step. The soft giggle echoed again, more distinct this time. It was a beckoning sound, laced with both innocence and something darker, an invitation to join the unseen. As I reached the door, my hand trembled on the doorknob. The wood felt cold, as if it had absorbed the chill of the night. I paused, taking a deep breath to steady myself. This was it. I needed to confront whatever was hiding in the darkness. With a slow turn of the knob, I pushed the door open, the hinges creaking loudly in protest. The narrow staircase spiraled up into the shadows, and the laughter danced just out of reach, swirling around me like a phantom. I climbed the steps, each one groaning underfoot, and with every inch I ascended, the air grew thicker. The attic loomed ahead, an expanse of darkness that seemed to stretch infinitely. My heart raced, pounding in my ears like a war drum. As I reached the top, I flicked on the light switch, the bulb flickering hesitantly before illuminating the space. Dust motes floated in the air, suspended like trapped memories. The attic was cluttered with forgotten treasures, old trunks, weathered furniture, and a layer of dust that hinted at years of abandonment. But as my eyes adjusted, I spotted something in the corner, a figure. My breath caught in my throat as I squinted into the shadows, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a small child standing motionless, with their back turned to me. The giggles had ceased, replaced by an unsettling stillness that wrapped around me like a shroud. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. "Are you okay?" Slowly the child turned, and I felt a jolt of terror as I met their gaze. Their eyes were wide and empty, void of any light, their mouth twisted into an unnatural smile. The laugh returned, echoing in the silence, a sound that pierced the air and sent shivers down my spine. In that moment I understood. This was no innocent child. This was a remnant of the past, a manifestation of the darkness that had claimed this farm. A twisted echo of joy that masked the horror lurking beneath the surface. I stumbled back, panic flooding my senses. The shadows around me deepened, clawing at my sanity. I turned to flee, but the attic door slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping me in the suffocating darkness. The laughter swelled, rising to a fever pitch as the child began to move toward me, their forms shifting and contorting as if the very fabric of reality was warping around them. I felt my heart racing, the adrenaline coursing through my veins, urging me to escape. But there was no escape. Not now. The nightmare had only just begun, and I was caught in its grasp, unable to break free from the shadows that had ensnared my family. Panic coursed through my veins as I pressed my back against the cold, wooden wall of the attic, desperately searching for a way out. The laughter, the twisted, echoing laughter, grew louder, reverberating around me, bouncing off the walls like a chaotic symphony of terror. I could barely think. My mind was a storm of fear and confusion. The child stood before me, their form shifting like smoke, a grotesque parody of innocence. "Let me go," I shouted, my voice cracking, echoing in the confined space. But my plea was met with silence as the figure continued to advance, its features becoming more pronounced with each step. The child's eyes, once empty, now glinted with a malevolent light, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked in this place. Every instinct told me to flee, yet the door remained stubbornly shut, the weight of something unseen pressing against it. I glanced around the attic, desperate for a means of escape. Old trunks lay scattered, their contents spilling onto the floor. Dusty blankets, forgotten toys, and broken furniture were strewn about, creating an obstacle course of memories and neglect. The child's smile twisted unnaturally, stretching too wide across their face, as if they were not entirely human. "Stay and play," they whispered, the voice soft yet laden with malice. I felt my skin crawl at the sound, as if the very air around me had turned to ice. "Get away from me," I yelled, my voice cracking under the strain of my fear. I lunged toward a nearby trunk, hoping to find something, anything, to defend myself. My hands fumbled with the latch, heart racing, as I desperately pried it open. Inside, I found a rusted metal lantern and some old matches, remnants of a time long forgotten. "Play with me," the child insisted, their voice now a haunting melody that filled the attic, wrapping around my mind like a vine. I grabbed the lantern, my fingers trembling as I struck a match, the flame flickering uncertainly before growing steady. The dim light illuminated the space around me, casting long shadows that danced with the flickering glow. As the lantern lit up, the child paused, their expression shifting. For a moment they seemed almost human, lost and frightened. But that moment shattered as the laughter returned, louder and more chaotic. The shadows thickened, swirling around us like a storm. I needed to escape, to find Emily and Lily before this darkness swallowed me whole. "I'm not playing," I shouted, pushing past the figure, the lantern held high as I dashed toward the door. But the shadows seemed to reach for me, clawing at my ankles, trying to pull me back into the abyss. The handle was still stuck. I pounded on the door, desperate for release. "Emily, Lily," I cried out, my voice hoarse with panic. The shadows whispered around me, a cacophony of voices, some familiar, some utterly foreign, blending into an incoherent symphony of despair. "Let me out," I screamed, slamming my shoulder against the door, the wood splintering under my weight. I could feel the child's presence close behind me, their laughter piercing through the tumult. I turned, ready to confront the nightmare, but the lantern flickered wildly, casting distorted shapes against the walls. Suddenly the door flew open, and I stumbled forward, collapsing onto the attic floor. I scrambled to my feet, eyes wide with terror as I dashed toward the staircase, the shadows trailing behind me like a living entity, eager to drag me back into the depths. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I burst into the living room, breathless and disoriented. Emily and Lily were there, sitting on the floor amidst the blankets, confusion etched across their faces. The soft glow of the lantern illuminated their worried expressions. "What happened?" Emily asked, her voice thick with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," I gasped, trying to catch my breath. "We have to get out of here." "No, Daddy, I was having fun," Lily protested, her bottom lip quivering as she looked between us. I could see the remnants of the child's influence lingering in her eyes, a flicker of something that sent chills racing down my spine. "Not now, sweetheart," I said, kneeling to her level, my hands gripping her shoulders. "Listen to me. There's something up there, something evil. We need to leave this place." Emily's expression hardened. "What do you mean? What did you see?" I hesitated, the weight of my experience crashing over me. "A child, an entity. It wants us to stay, to play. I think it's tied to the darkness in this house." As I spoke, I noticed the shadows in the corners of the room stretching and shifting, almost as if they were alive, eager to encroach upon our sanctuary. Emily's eyes widened with fear, and I could see the resolve in her expression waver. "What do we do?" she asked, voice trembling. "We can't just leave. We've put so much into this place. This isn't just a house anymore, Emily. It's a trap," I insisted. "We need to pack up and go." We can figure out our next steps somewhere safe. A sudden crash echoed from above, the attic door slamming shut with a force that shook the floorboards. Lily screamed, the sound piercing through the heavy atmosphere, and I turned to see the shadows swirling closer, engulfing the edges of the room in an inky blackness. "No, stay away," I shouted, grabbing Emily and Lily, pulling them toward the front door. The air grew thick with a suffocating energy, and I could feel the panic rising, clawing at my throat. "Daddy, I'm scared," Lily cried, clinging to my leg. "I know, sweetheart. Just hold on tight," I said, determination flooding through me. We rushed to the door, but as I reached for the handle, a shadowy form coalesced in front of us, blocking our escape. "Stay with me," the child's voice echoed, now a chilling whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Play forever." "No," I shouted, pushing against the entity with all my might. I could feel the coldness radiating from it, wrapping around me like a vice, and in that moment I understood that this was not just a child. It was a manifestation of the farm's dark history, a spirit forged from pain and despair. With a surge of adrenaline, I swung the lantern, its light cutting through the darkness. The flame flickered, illuminating the space around us, and for a brief moment the child faltered, their form wavering as if the light had burned through the shadows. "Emily!" "Now!" I yelled, and with a fierce determination, we pushed past the apparition, the door swinging open in a burst of freedom. We stumbled outside into the cool night air, the weight of the darkness lifting as the moonlight bathed us in a protective glow. But the laughter echoed behind us, lingering in the air like a haunting melody, promising that the shadows would never truly let go. We raced toward the car, my heart pounding as I fumbled for the keys. I could feel the presence following us, lurking in the corners of my mind. It was not over. Not yet. As I turned the key in the ignition, I stole one last glance at the farmhouse. Its silhouette loomed against the night sky, a dark reminder of the horrors we had faced. But as we sped away, I vowed to uncover the truth behind the farm's dark legacy, even if it meant confronting the nightmares that had taken root in our lives. The journey was far from over, and I could sense that the shadows would not rest until they had claimed what they desired, until they had drawn us back into their suffocating embrace. You made it to the end of the stories. That means it's the perfect time to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you haven't already, leave a like and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great time relaxing, and good night.